Hey everyone, we are live on the Overland Podcast. We're going to click a few buttons here and see if I can get us live on Instagram so we can be live on more places than just two. But I am live with Graeme Bell. Graeme, how are you this evening?
All right, how you doing?
Doing very well. Doing very well. This is a huge treat for me. I've been wanting to get you on here for some time now, but it's really hard to find you sitting still. You're moving around a lot, and it seems like you just settled down for a little while and there in central Mexico. You've hit all the expos and went to the shows and got your fair share of that. I guess you're tired of those and wanting to take a break for a little bit.
Yep, pretty much, but it's only temporary.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
sure. How are you finding Mexico? Why did you decide to settle there for a little while?
Uh, hmm. None of my answers are simple.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I like the weather. It's always complicated.
Yeah.
But I'll try and keep it as interesting as possible. The kids are getting older,
Mm,
and the what do they call it? The roosters have come home to roost, and all those years on the road, always part of the big deal was like, okay. We've taken them out of normal schooling. They have not had conventional lives. Now they have to, eventually they have to get off into the world and be their own people. And this
yeah.
is the process we're going through now is like getting them to a point where they can go be self-sufficient and go live their lives the way they want to do
Yeah.
it. But at the same time, we're living together and Jessica's doing a bit of studying here and there. She just qualified as an English teacher.
Mm,
Um, Keelan has we organized it. We managed to get him a job through our contacts doing remote IT.
mm,
So he's doing well.
good.
He's saving a lot of cash because we know the whole family's living together. We're splitting all the bills and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of our thing. It's like, okay, now we've taken a year or so to be kind of stationary, get the kids sorted out so we can get them off on their own, and then we can carry on doing what we want to do.
Well, y'all been traveling since I think the first book on the back of it says 2010. So have you been traveling full time since 2010 together as a family?
Pretty much. Our first real international journey was 2010. We drove from Cape Town up to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania and got back home and then decided that was pretty cool. Let's do more of that. But
Hmm.
first, we moved into another house and blah, blah, blah. And it took us a year or so, year to get back on the road full time. And before we realized that that's really what we wanted out of life. Um, in that time, we still drove up to Mozambique and stuff like that. So that wasn't we weren't full time travelers until I think mid to late 2012. That's when we really gave it all up and hit the road full time.
Wow, 2012. And you did quite a few things. And if you read the books, you'll find out kind of how you were able to make a living while you were on the road. But you did a lot of house sitting and things like that, which made the stories interesting depending on which house you were at and the people who owned the house and how they acted toward you. That really made for some interesting stories.
I'm glad you enjoyed it because I didn't enjoy that part of it. Living in other people's houses. One thing I found is Louisa and I are both very hard workers and we love clean and order.
Mm,
And we stayed for instance, we stayed at this British couple's house in the Cotswolds, a very beautiful part of the UK. And they just finished doing extensions and that on the house. So there was cement on the driveway and there's a lot of moss and I found a power sprayer. And I think for a month I just power sprayed everything that wasn't moving. I
yeah.
think even the cat got it clean, but and then the farmers would come past and give me a nod and a thumbs up, and I'm like, yeah, I'm doing the right thing, yeah. And they came back and they were not happy
Mm,
that I had power sprayed all the charm off of their house, according to them. To me, it was just mold and mildew, and to them, it was something beautiful. And yeah, so we learned like don't clean people's houses. They don't really appreciate it as much as you think they're gonna, inside and out.
you never know how people are going to react to the
Yeah,
nice
people are
things you
weird.
do.
Yeah, people are strange.
They sure are. How are you enjoying working with the Overland Journal?
I've been riding with them for them since 2015, 2016.
Mm-hmm.
I was I remember posting I had a pair of shoes I had a pair of Merrells that had lasted me 3.5 years. And we were house sitting a farm in Mexico, and I was posting about I was bitching about how my shoes were falling apart and I couldn't get a new pair of shoes because I had to buy Land Rover spares. And the then editor, the guy that was doing my job, Christoph Knoll, he sent me an email. He says, "Come on, man, let's get you some new shoes. Why don't you doing some riding for us?" Um, and that's pretty much where it started. I think it was 2016, late 2015, and I
But
love it. I love it. I mean, that
uh,
just working with them has um, been able to keep the wheels turning
mm,
a lot of times. The
yeah.
income coming from them, even when we were in Turkey or whatever, I'm just doing freelance stuff. I was just doing articles for OJ or Expedition Portal, and
Mm-hmm.
a check would come through, and it'd be that's enough to get us, another week or two down the road. So yeah, I love it, and I've learned so much doing it.
Yeah, I remember reading in the Europe Overland book about how wishy washy selling your own books was, especially going through Amazon and different things like that, and how that really affected your income several times. So I can't imagine not not knowing when that next check is going to come through. So getting a little more steady income, I'm sure is quite a blessing.
Yeah, it was with the books. It was difficult because um, Amazon screwed us.
Mm,
They continue to screw us.
mm,
I mean, my books are very well reviewed, and I know they're moving, and the sales are not what they should be for the volumes because they're taking 85%.
goodness.
Um, yeah, and I just get the peanuts at the end. But that's why we really prefer to kind of um, sell them through our website.
Right.
And the last a few books we've kickstarted or done a crowdfunding, just basically like as a pre-order
Right.
thing, and that's
Hmm.
a great way to do it because then people buy directly from us. They get the books directly from us usually.
Hmm.
We get to make the profit. We get a lump sum, and then after that, we put them on Amazon and then let them do their thing because we're not stationary. If we were stationary, we would just print the books and sell them ourselves.
Right. Right.
Um, but every little thing, everything helps. The
Yeah.
books, the articles, working with some of the companies I work with, like General Tire.
Hmm.
Um, you know, just having a bit coming from everywhere really keeps it going. And like during COVID, um, man, we were. I'm busy actually writing. Is this my sixth book? I think it's my sixth book now. And I'm right at the beginning. I actually just started writing it today. So good timing. Um, and writing about being stuck in South Africa during COVID. You there, Joey? Joey, you there?
All right. I'm back. Goodness.
All right.
Well,
There you go.
the glitches will kill you. The glitches will kill you. I
All
swear.
right.
It's not even good. Not even good here in the United States. You were
What
saying
was it?
about
Yours time.
COVID, and then I disappeared. So here we go.
Um, yeah, I started writing my sixth book today, and it kind of it starts in COVID because that's where the last book left off. There was Mud, Malaria, Guns, and Miracles,
Hmm.
and I've been putting it off forever, but I don't really know why. But it just COVID just screwed everything up for everyone.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, that was tough, especially when everyone was just um, trying to survive,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
that's
we
true.
still managed to come out of that, the other side of that, strong and hit the road for Vladivostok. So they must have been doing something right.
Where were you when COVID hit?
We were on the road to Vladivostok, so we were in South Africa, and we had
Hmm.
just left. We had left the southernmost point of South Africa, of Africa, um, called Cape Agulhas, and we were in a campsite. And then I'd been watching the news for a while. It took a time for this COVID thing to brew, and I was sitting in a campsite, and I said to the kids and Louisa, I'm like, this isn't good. Something's going to happen here, and they were like, "Oh, Dad, you're just being paranoid.
Hmm.
Come on, put yourself together," kind of thing. And then boom, we went into lockdown, but it was a hard lockdown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a tough time for everybody. I was off work for a couple weeks, but they saw me as essential, so I had to go back to work. And when everybody else was getting quarantined, I was still working. So it was a tough time. And, everybody fled to the national forest and to the woods because they're like, okay, if everything's shut down, we'll just go to the woods. And then when we would go to the woods, there was no campsites because everybody was there, and so there
All
was
right.
nowhere to go to get away from it. So it was tough. Now on March
That's
on
weird
March,
because
go ahead.
in South Africa was you were locked in your house. You could only
Really?
walk your dog um, if your dog had three legs and a brown nose. You could only like go to the shops at certain times of the day. They just got totalitarian very, very quickly.
Hmm.
Um, you couldn't cross state borders. You couldn't cross international borders. It was hardcore. So people were just stuck at home, and there was a booze ban.
Really?
Yeah, booze is alcohol and cigarettes. They banned alcohol and cigarettes,
Wow. Huh.
which just created a black market,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
then somebody put out a recipe on Facebook, and it was how to make pineapple cider using pineapples, yeast, sugar, and whatever else. And pineapples became the most valuable commodity in South Africa because everyone was suddenly making pineapple cider.
Oh, that's great. It's kind of like if you take the guns away, only criminals will have guns, and if you take the booze away, only criminals will have booze. They're gonna find a way to get it, one way or another.
Yeah, and if you take booze away, everyone becomes a criminal because they want booze. Well,
Exactly.
everyone that drinks, and in South Africa, that's pretty much most people.
Everyone becomes a 10-year-old because the 10-year-olds only want the things you tell them they can't have.
Right. Yeah. Whereas before, it's like, yeah, I could do without a beer today. It was like, okay, I really want that beer because I've only got six. Yeah.
Right. And they told me I can't
Yeah.
have one, so that's what I want. Oh
Right.
man. Now on March the 1st, you and Luisa celebrated 30 almost 30 years together, 21 of those being married. She has been that's what you posted. I read that on your post today.
Really?
Yeah. Was it you say
Well, oh
almost
shit,
30?
you might be right. It's
Yeah.
almost 30 years. Yeah.
Almost 30 years. 21 of those being married. So I'm imagining y'all were together for quite a while before you got married. She's been with you every step of the way. Where do you think you'd be without her?
That's an interesting question.
I'm not trying to get you in trouble here either because I'm a married man and my wife goes everywhere with me, and I know how big of a part of my life that my wife is, and yours the same because she does so much of helping you and being there with you. Um, there's no telling where I would be in life without my wife. I know that. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's well, all I can do is think is like, who was I before I met her? And I had just come back from traveling. Um, I was hitchhiking, and I'd been in Israel for a number of years, working on not a number of years, for exactly 1 year, working in restaurants and doing all kinds of stuff. And my goal had gone back to South Africa basically because I had a return ticket, and the whole idea was I was going to go back, say goodbye to everyone, make a bit of money, and carry on traveling. Um, so if I hadn't met Louisa, I think the chances are that I would have uh, carried on traveling.
Mm,
I would have hit the road, done something else. The thing is, what's different about with Louisa is that she's very, 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 very good with bureaucracy,
mm,
and that's one thing that international overlanding has a lot of is bureaucracy. Is
mm-hmm,
it's at every turn. It's just it's from the paperwork to the shipping of the vehicles, the visas and the passports and all that kind of stuff. And before I met her, I was like, I got nervous just getting a passport.
mm,
Like the paperwork didn't make sense. It was not something that I felt that I was very confident or competent at doing. Whereas Louisa was like, she had international clients and she had no qualms about doing the most extraordinary things over the telephone and emails and
mm.
organizing shit that most people wouldn't even dare to organize because there's just so much risk involved and so much paperwork and bureaucracy, and you have to do it properly.
Yeah.
And that's one of the first things I realized about Louise is that she had no boundaries when it comes to those kind of things because she can do anything. She can organize
Mm,
anything,
mm.
you know. Um, so without her, yeah, I'd probably be sitting in India or something. Yeah, a yoga teacher, or I really don't know what I think I would have been a writer eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's impossible to know.
Well, a few months ago, you posted that Luis's mom suddenly passed away. Condolences to your family
Thank
because of
you.
that.
Yeah.
And y'all were able to go back home to the funeral. How long had it been since you had been back home?
Um, 2020,
So it's been about 4 years. Yeah.
about 4 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
3.5 years.
What has what's changed
Yeah.
over that amount of time that you noticed?
Us or the country?
The country. Has anything changed,
Um,
or is it stuck back in the 1960s like a lot of the South African countries?
no. You know, do you watch rugby?
A little bit, yeah.
South Africa's got a rugby team. They call the Springboks,
Hmm.
and this one rugby team, this one sports team, has done more for national unity than any politician, than any other personality,
Wow.
than Nelson Mandela himself.
Hmm.
Okay, Mandela probably comes pretty close, but that rugby team is pretty much South Africa's proud pride and glory. Is that the right way to say it? Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean
yeah. Pride and joy.
pride and
Yeah,
joy. I mean,
yeah.
and we that they've won so many. They've won 4 World Cups now, which is a big
Wow.
thing.
Wow, that's big.
They've won a bunch of the other competitions. They're the international on the international stage are just fantastic, and they don't. They've got challenges. South Africa's got challenges.
Hmm.
There's a lot of problems, but when the Springboks are playing, it really brings the whole country together. And to me, it's the most interesting thing because it was predominantly a Afrikaner sport,
Hmm.
with a few English players. And then over the years, they started bringing in players, black players, and there are people that you'd never in a million years would think would be cheering on a black man, and these guys are
Hmm.
crying over these guys because they're so proud of them.
Wow.
It's like our current captain, Sia Khaleesi. He's loved universally in South Africa,
Hmm.
and that has been so good. I think for national unity and race relations, they
Hmm.
can't be overstated. You know, and I think we noticed that when we went back in 2019 after West Africa, we kind of went back, and there's still so many problems. But man, what a beautiful country!
Yeah.
You forget how beautiful the country is. Um, and then you see that the kids are going to school. A lot of kids go to school together, and they're all mixed. It's not like it used to be when I went to school. And that certainly helps because now you have children growing up together and they become very, very good friends, and that spills over into adult life in the workplace and
Mm,
stuff like that. So I see a lot of unity. And there's a lot of beautiful things happening in South Africa. And we saw that when we went back now. We flew back in. And, you know, it's really about, I think, the way you approach people. And if you treat them with respect, that's the respect that you're going to receive.
mm,
And we found that, especially, it was wonderful to be back. It really made us miss home.
mm. I've got a good friend that lives in Angola. He had a Land Rover shop up in Springfield, Missouri for a while, and got married, had a baby, and they wanted their baby to be raised in Angola, so they moved back. And he told me, he said, "You're welcome anytime. Just come. We've got they own a big farm down there, a ranch. They got Land Rovers everywhere." And after I started researching it, it's not really on very many people's top 20, most wanted places to go in the world. But once you discover the beaches and how beautiful it is, and the mountains and the different things that are there, you start, wow, I never knew this was here. And it's a very interesting place, beautiful place, and I would love to go there visit.
You should take dollars, take a lot of dollars.
Yeah, expensive
Yeah,
to
they
go.
have a petro economy and they have a black market for the dollar.
Mm,
So if you've got $1,000 and you go change it on the black market, then you get almost twice your money. But
wow.
Angola is special because you drive in from the Congo,
Mm,
and the Congo is just absolute chaos, but like blood diamond kind of chaos.
hmm.
It's
Yeah.
just insanity. And then you drive into Angola, and then there's all these old colonial Portuguese towns
Mm,
that are nice and clean and well taken care of, and there's supermarkets and there's people speaking Portuguese, and there's
wow.
good roads and good
Yeah.
food and
Yeah.
nice beaches. It's really quite amazing.
That's cool. Do you miss it? Do you miss being there? Do you miss living there?
In Africa,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. When we went back now, um, it was difficult because I just lost so much weight recently, and South Africa has got some of the best food in the world,
Yeah.
and it's cheap.
Yeah.
Um, so I just stayed away from sugar, but I ate whatever I wanted. But every night I'd have a barbecue. We call it a
Mm,
braai,
yeah.
and lamb chops and boerewors, which is this long twirled up sausage,
Mm,
steaks and salads and breads, you name it. I ate like a king. The best wine, just everything. And you're drinking and eating this food in this amazing campsite that's just world class.
mm.
And you're like, we need to do this more often. We really need to do this more often. Yeah. And yeah, so I'd encourage anyone who's kind of on the fence about traveling to Africa. Um, and everyone that asks me, I said, you know what? Go down to South Africa, go down to Cape Town, especially. Rent a Land Cruiser or a Toyota Hilux.
Mm,
Go see Namibia. Spend time on the West Coast, especially the Western Cape.
mhm,
Especially if you're a newbie to overland travel, international overland travel, you want to kind of stick in the Western Cape. It's kind of the safest place to be.
mm,
Go in winter or fall, and you'll be blown away. You won't believe it. I mean, a campsite will cost $10 a night
mm.
US. A For 20-25 US a night, you can get into a nice 4-star hotel.
Wow.
You can have a steak meal with lobster tails for $10. Um, you'd have the time of your life, and you can see the big five. You can go hiking and do whatever you want.
Mm,
It's just freaking amazing. Go see the great white sharks or whatever. It's like, yeah, it's an amazing place.
that's crazy. Well, you mentioned your health and losing a bunch of weight. We share something in common. Both of us have lost a bunch of weight, close to about the same amount from what you've talked about. Now, what made you realize that a change was necessary? Did something happen, or you just come to yourself and say, "I need to do this, have some goals in life"?
That was a combination of things. Like, I never identified as a overweight person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, you're a big guy. You're a tall, um,
Yeah.
wide, wide guy. So
Yeah.
you didn't look overweight. I mean, you look really good now, but you didn't look overweight then.
Yeah. Thanks. I was like, I flew into, it was during COVID and we flew into um, Florida and borrowed a friend's Range Rover. And I stepped on the scale at Publix and it was exactly 300 pounds. And I was like, okay, uh, that's not good.
Mm.
But I always enjoyed being a large guy. I didn't mind being overweight um, because I like being big. I think
Mhm.
it's actually it's actually it's an advantage when you're traveling internationally,
I was thinking that
especially
same
in
thing of, having a very intimidating posture when you walk up to some of those border crossings. It's probably a good
yeah,
thing to have.
yeah, especially when Keelan, when he was 18, 19, he was almost my height and he was also about 300 pounds. The two of us would get out of the landy and no one messed with us,
Mm,
you know? And I liked that. And I didn't have a problem with that. I didn't feel unhealthy. It sucked that I couldn't wear the clothing I wanted to wear. And you know what it's like.
yeah.
But I eventually got to the age where the weight stopped sitting up on the shoulders and it just sat around my waist.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So I went
Yeah.
from being a big guy to a skinny fat guy,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean. And I was like,
Yeah.
and that kind of that didn't sit well with me. And I was like, okay, well now I need to change because that's no longer healthy. That's just out of shape.
No.
And then we were in Phoenix on the way down to Mexico, and a friend of mine had a stroke. Jared, Jen and Jared, they traveled a bunch in Africa with a Jeep and a trailer, a South African trailer.
Mm,
Pioneering Spirit, they call themselves.
okay.
And he had a stroke, and he was also a big boy. And I don't know if that, I didn't consciously kind of connect the two of those together, but I think maybe it did. And it kind of made me say, think, like now's the time. And like I think I was saying to you off air as well, is like when I get to the age of 50, I want to be in shape
Mhm.
and I want to be in a good place mentally and financially and all of that. So I think it's just kind of that goal. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be 50 at the end of this year, and I want to walk into 50 being feeling good, looking good, being healthier.
How has it helped you in everyday life? I know you do a lot of the work on your vehicle yourself. Has it made it easier to crawl under the car or crawl under the hood? Is it easier to do that now since you're a skinny man?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So like I did the suspension bushes on the the Defender, and that's basically you're just doing sit ups all day long. You just like you got the pry bar and you're wrestling with those big old nuts and bolts, and you're just doing sit ups the whole freaking day. And
Hmm.
and then you're flipping around and doing push ups, getting off the floor, getting the shit, getting back under, doing that all the time. And um, I wasn't getting as hot as I would before, and it was freaking hot. I was doing this during a heat wave in
Hmm.
Salt Lake City, so that was fun. Um, and and I felt I had more stamina and I think upper body strength. I think that's pretty much the same. Um, but yeah,
That's one thing that I wanted to make sure that I did not lose. I wanted to lose the weight without losing the strength, and I think that's something hard to do is keep
yeah,
your strength up. So you say on one of your posts that you exercise an hour and a half a day. So I know you go on walks, you walk your dogs. Anything else special that you do while you're traveling to staying healthy?
yeah. So the walks help a lot, and not drinking a six pack a day that helps a lot.
Yeah, that was
And
one of
I got
my
this,
questions. I was going to ask you how hard it was to give the beer up because I read a lot. You love the beer,
man. It's a German blood,
yeah,
but I can drink beer like a proper German. Love this stuff.
yeah.
But then something just clicked. I don't know what it was, and it just I call it being beered out,
Mm,
where possibly it's not drinking the best quality beer. I think that helps. When you're drinking shitty beer, it leaves an aftertaste, and
mm,
it's not great. Like your European beers, you can drink all day long. They're very, very pure.
mm,
Um, but I'd have like 3 beers, and I'd just be like, I'm just not in the mood for beer anymore. You know.
mm,
So then I have a glass of red wine, you know, or I just stop having whatever and carry on with my day.
mm,
Um, so I think that, yeah, maybe I don't know, but
mm.
I still love the stuff,
Yeah.
but
You have to make adult decisions sometimes
yeah,
for
right.
your better good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it also helped. Like, look, you know what it's like when you're on the road and you've been driving all day, you've been doing whatever, you're doing trails, you're putting up with vehicle problems, whatever it is, and you get to a campsite and you light the fire. There's no way on earth you're not going to put a beer in your hand, a cold beer or a
Mm,
cold drink, whatever. For me, it's cold beer.
mm,
And so when we're on the road, it's very easy for me to drink 2 or 3 beers a day. Whereas, and Louisa doesn't give me a hard time about it for some reason. But when we're in a house, she hears that beer go, she's all over me, man. She gives me such a hard time. Just come on, back off, dude. Yeah.
yeah. She
But
has she's definitely one that's kept you in check over the years on more than one front on
for
many
sure.
different things. Yeah. That's
Yeah, for
cool.
sure. Yeah.
My wife does too. Let's talk about your books for a minute. This is one of the things that's really attracted me to you is your books, and I guess it was a couple years ago. I can't remember. It was sometime around Black Friday or Christmas. You put a sale where you could buy all your books for one price, and I jumped on it, and so I got
Okay.
all of them. And I started out, and I've read this one, "The We Will Be Free." That was your inaugural book. You call it your Declaration of Independence from Ordinary Life. And that's pretty much what it is. It's the beginning of your world travel. Um, and there was so many good stories in here. I actually uh, read it a couple times because I couldn't keep up, and I would forget something. I'd say, I got to go back and read that again. It was just so good. But what got me in there was all the border crossings. It seemed like 3 or 4 times a chapter you were crossing the border, going here, going there, and the way that you and Louisa worked together, she would go here and you would go there. You'd do this and she'd do that in order to get things done. And the way that y'all worked together throughout that whole book was just fascinating, showing that it took both of you to get it done. It was really a cool story.
Yeah. Well, firstly, thank you very much. I mean, that's the greatest compliment you can give to an author is to say you've read the book twice.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I really appreciate that. That was our Pearl Jam 10, I think.
mm,
There was
yeah, yeah,
the first album, and it was, you know, I think because of its originality and it was raw, and as of the books have become better written and more polished as we've gone along.
mm,
And We'll Be Free it had this real rough kind of on the road grittiness to it. You could smell the oil. Um,
yeah,
yeah, and the campfire.
yeah.
So yeah, I really appreciate that. But yeah, we're working together. I mean, Louisa's our business. It was mainly her business. I was her um, right hand man. She ran an immigration firm,
Mm,
and that's what she did. Is she helped people get work permits in South Africa and dealing with all the bureaucracy,
mm,
which can be very, very challenging in South Africa, especially back in those days. So that was her thing. Bureaucracy is she penetrates it. She's like I think I even say it in the book. You remember The Incredibles?
hmm.
When the little boss says, "Bob, they're penetrating the bureaucracy." That's what she does.
Yeah,
She penetrates the bureaucracy. So
that's great.
we've through dealing with the bureaucrats at Home Affairs in South Africa, getting the work permits, we already had before we even got on the road, we had an understanding of how these people work, how they tick. And my thing is, I would go in and I would submit the work permit applications, and I'd kiss the butts, and I'd do whatever I had to do and build the relationships and do it, but never pay bribes
Right.
because we just didn't believe in that. And then when we found ourselves at some developing world global south border, those same principles apply because they're exactly the same people,
Hmm.
you know? And then, so Louisa's strength is she'd have all the paperwork in order. She understood exactly what was required, what we were, entitled to, and etc. And my strength would be I knew how to just ease these people into the process and get through it. So that's what we did. We worked together as a team, and we'd get through it.
And you had small children with you,
Yeah,
which really makes it complicated sometimes when you
especially when
get.
Jessica says things like when we're going into Venezuela, and she never says anything at any of the borders. But we're crossing into Venezuela, and they say, "What work do you do?" And she goes, "Oh, he's a journalist." And I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. I'm a writer. I'm not a journalist." Because it's Venezuela,
Yeah,
Um,
you're coming in to
but
spy on them. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And I'm like, "Geez, Jess, there was no need for that." Um, but anyway, so she'd do stuff like that, silly stuff at silly times. But otherwise, they learned. They would sit patiently, and we'd just do what we had to do, and we'd always give them a reward. Afterwards, we'd go find an ice cream joint or a chicken joint or whatever, and go get them a cool drink or an ice cream or something. And always the first night in a new country, we'd have a big braai, a barbecue, and
Mm.
make them their favorite food and stuff like that. So, we really learned how to make it easier for them and not more difficult.
Do you think they enjoyed it? The time doing that. Now looking back on it, do you think they really enjoyed the travel instead of a just a home life, regular kid life? Do you think they enjoyed that?
I absolutely think they did, um, especially when they were young,
Mm.
because they were, and especially in South America, get a lot of kids around
Mm.
in those days. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
Wi-Fi was intermittent. You go to a camp, there'd be 20 kids running around,
Yeah.
and boom, they'd make friends. And um, we'd try and stay longer at the camps that had kids. But it kind of all started changing a little bit when we got into the northern hemisphere, and um, we met the marketing manager for AT&T, and he gave us a box. We were at a car show in Redmond, selling books to keep the wheels turning. And this guy comes over and he says to Keenan, "What do you do for navigation?" And Keenan showed him this bust up Samsung tablet we'd bought in Chile. And the guy went off, came back, and gave him a box. And inside were 5 new Galaxy whatever phones, brand new. Um, and wow, we were like, "That's amazing! That's fantastic!" Um, but what we didn't realize is after that, everyone was on their phones, everyone had the
Mm.
internet, and then it changed, and then it
Mm.
stopped being one-on-one interactions, meeting people, doing whatever. Yeah, there was still a lot of that, but the priority became online gaming. It
Yeah.
became um, eventually Minecraft or Sims
Yeah.
or whatever it was, and that kind of changed it. And um, they enjoyed Europe as well,
Mm.
especially going to the overland shows and that. And by then we've gotten a little bit of a reputation, so people recognized us, and it was always great when people would come over to the kids and say, "Do you realize how amazing your life is?
Yeah.
Do you realize how awesome this
Yeah.
is?" And they'd go,
Yeah.
"Yeah, yeah, we know. It's awesome." Um,
That's funny.
but yeah, and then they grew up, and then they grew up doing it, and it's like kind of asking a rich kid if they like being rich, if all they ever known is being rich. They're like, "Well, what else is there? That I know what it's like."
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the thing for them is that they grew up doing it. So for everybody else, what they've done is exceptional, but to them, it's quite ordinary.
Right. Um, I have not read your Overlanding in America, the La Lucha, but you state on here that it is that liberation never comes without a fight. What do you mean with that? What can I expect when I read this?
So when we first set off, um, we were supposed to be gone for 18 months.
Mm.
And then we'd circumnavigated South America. Actually, we'd driven up to northern Brazil, and this is all in We'll Be Free. And we drove all the way down
Mm-hmm.
to Ushuaia and then up to Colombia. And then we were sitting there having a braai, having a barbecue. And we were busy organizing for the ship to go to Panama and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And Louisa was like, I'm not ready to leave South America.
Mm.
And I'm like, I feel exactly the same. I'm not ready to go. And she's like, what do we do? And I'm like, well, we can't, we're not going home. And anyway, we agreed that we were going to go back to Brazil. So we landed up going into Venezuela through the Amazon and basically circumnavigating South America. We got
Mm.
down to Brazil, and then Louisa's like, okay, I think I'm done. I'm like, I'm not done. But I tell you what, go back to South Africa, stay there for a month. And if you tell me that that's what you want to do, you want to go back to living that life, we'll rebuild, we'll do it all over again. You just tell me, and that's what we'll do. And then she was back for a week. And she phoned me and she said, no, she wants to be on the road.
Mm.
So then we had to figure out how we were going to pay for it
Yeah.
because we had savings, not much in relative terms compared to what we were doing. And we had some income, but that was only for a limited amount of period. And so we're like, well, I guess we're just going to have to figure it out. And that's when it got tough
Mm.
because now we're trying to achieve what has been almost impossible for very, very, very many people
Mm.
is how to travel the world without savings
Yeah.
on a shoestring budget while earning.
Right. And not be born
Um,
rich like a lot of
yeah,
them are.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Um, and that made it difficult because not only were we doing it's one of the most difficult things you can do, um, with especially not having the experience that we have now. Now it's very easy for us to do these kind of things, but back then we had still so much to learn.
Mm.
So what made it tough is, you know, okay, now we've got this dream, and we're just going to keep going, and we're going to make it happen,
Mm.
no matter what it takes. And that's what we did. And that to me is a massive challenge.
Yeah.
That was a fight
For sure.
for sure.
For sure. Well, I have read the Europe Overland. This is, I really enjoyed this book. I love how you started out with a goal. I think your goal was to get to Asia, to China, but that never happened. But so many cool things happen in this book. One of the greatest stories that stands out to me was the hot air balloons when you just heard them and go outside and there they were. I mean, that was just I could just picture that in my mind. I thought that was so
Right.
cool.
That was
But
awesome. We'd that was Cappadocia in Turkey, and
mm,
what's beautiful about that area, and it probably won't last much longer. But there's a lot of places you could go because it's basically there's an underground city within this sandstone, this eroded sandstone bluff with spires, and it's just the most amazing landscape. And you can camp a lot of places. You can go all over within there. You can explore it to your heart's content. It's
that was
really
one
not
of the
that
things
regulated.
that was one of the things that really shocked me was how you really were adamant about that, and you really told that over and over about how a lot of people don't think that you can overland in that part of the world, but how easy it was to come by places and how beautiful they were when you found them. I was
Yeah,
shocked. I thought that was a great story.
yeah, and we were free, and people
Mm.
treated us so well because we treated them well as well.
Mhm.
Oh, I could tell you, and it's all in the book. There's so many stories
Yeah.
about that part of the world, Turkey and Greece
Mm.
and all of that. We had a fantastic time there. But anyway, so we woke up in the morning, we'd had a braai, and that's the one thing you'll see in every like it's like at the end of every like sixth or seventh page of the book, it's like, and then we had a braai,
Yeah.
and 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 that's our thing. It's with South African. That's our culture. We make a fire, we
Yeah.
grill some meat, we sit and we enjoy the stars, and we talk
Mhm.
and we talk about the day, and we figure out what we're going to do the next day.
Mm.
And so we'd gone to bed quite early, and then I woke up and I heard this whooshing sound, and I looked out, and there there were these people in this hot air balloon because we were up on these cliffs,
Mm-hmm.
but right next to the edges. It was actually quite spooky. You didn't want to stumble off and go pee in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And here's this hot air balloon, and there's all these Asian tourists looking straight at me in my camper, and I'm like, oh shit! Hey, Louisa, get up! And we climbed out, and the one hot air balloon came straight at us, and then lifted a bit, and then just glided on top of the Land Rover. We missed the roof by about 2 inches, 3 inches.
Wow.
And we're
Incredible.
like, that's one hell of a way to wake up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What a
it was
memory. What
incredible.
a memory. That's great. Um, the the Travel the Planet Overland has been hailed as one of the greatest overland books ever written. Um, and it's a big one. I like the size of this
That's a
one.
big
You
one.
can hold that one in your hand. And you have a picture in here of some good friends of mine, Jorge and Jessica from Live Work Wonder.
Right.
They've actually stayed in my home, and I miss them. They've given up on social media and given up on their YouTube channel, and I respect that and I respect their privacy, but I miss them. I wish them all the best. And But meeting people like that, and you have in this book, you've got recipes, you've got different people that you've met along the way, and it is an incredible read. I just love this book.
Thank you. That was Louisa's idea. Um, so we're going back to La Lucha, the book, why it's called The Fight. Um, we'd gone up to Alaska, basically run out of money in October in a place called Homer. And luckily, I had a payment come through from Amazon. And it was back then, fuel was very cheap. This is 2015, 2016.
Mm,
And we were able to get back down through the States, but now we'd outstayed our visa almost. We never got a legal, but we had to get out of the US and get into Mexico. And then we got this house sitting gig up in the mountains in Baja, 2,300 meters, I think it is. What's that in feet? That's like
mm,
5,500 feet, something
yeah,
like
almost
that,
6,000 feet. Yeah.
up by the observatory of San Pedro de Martir. And Louisa had found this house sitting gig, basically taking care of this ranch in the middle of nowhere. And we were sitting there scratching our heads, going, "What do we do now?" Because we're planning on traveling around the whole world, but now we don't have a source of income other than one book. And in the US, it was very easy to sell books out of hand, and it would make a great profit. But you can't do that if you can't be there.
Mm,
And so Louise is like, we need to write this book, how to do what we do, because we've learned so much doing. We made all the mistakes. You know what I mean? That's um,
hmm
these guys are anyway. I think that's great wisdom to share, is the wisdom that you've earned,
Yeah.
um, that you've learned the hard way. So Louisa goes, okay, let's write this book, and we'll do a Kickstarter. And usually I'm the one with all the great ideas, and she's the one that shoots them down immediately. And it was like the other way around this time. I was like, oh no, it's never going to work. Not going to happen. And she's like, yeah, well, anyway, let's do it. And we're like, okay. So I did the writing, most of it, and we just broke it up into sections, what made the most sense, and everything from the finances and that to how to motivate your significant other. That's one
Mm,
of my favorite chapters in the book, but it's the least PC of them, I think.
mm,
Um, and and we just we had all these great photos, we had all these great stories, we had all this wisdom. We put it all together, did a Kickstarter, and the Americans came behind us, especially a lot of Europeans as well,
mm.
and especially Americans, and knocked it out the park.
Yeah.
I think it was $50,000, something like that. And
Wow.
then what I did is I thought, okay, what we'll do is when we print the books, we print double what we need, because then you pay a lot less for each book.
hmm
And then we landed up all these books that had been paid for by the Kickstarter that we then sold out of hand. So we made even more profit out of that. And that paid for the conversion of the Defender into a camper, which we did ourselves.
hmm
It got us into Europe, and it got us, I wouldn't, it got us back into Africa. And then the writing of the other books and kept selling, and then doing the articles for OJ and Expedition Portal, that kind of paid for the all the visas and the traveling and that got us through West Africa back down to South Africa. So yeah, it was it was I'm eternally grateful to Louisa for having that great idea, because it really paid off for us. And then
Well,
we
that's
did an updated version as well now with
right, right.
Jorge and Jessica helped out with the graphic design
Mm, yeah,
of
that's what she
the
did.
cover and that. I know they love that book,
Mm,
and so we really appreciated it. And so we did a reboot of that, basically what we'd learned, because that came out in 2016,
hmm
and then we refreshed it, I think, in 22.
mm.
Um, and yeah, so we're very proud of that book. That's everything we know in on paper.
Well, that one, as well as the mud, malaria, guns, and miracles. Uh, your journey along the west coast of Africa. All these are available on your website, www.a2aexpedition.com. And like you said, don't go to Amazon, go to the website. That's where everything is. You can also get some of them on Kindle, on Amazon's Kindle. I read one of them on Kindle. I think the second time I read the We Will Be Free, it was actually on my Kindle, which I was shocked when I searched for you on Kindle, because it's kind of a habit I have. I lay in bed at night with my phone, and that's how I put myself to sleep, is I read myself to sleep. And
All right,
thank you for putting me to sleep several times. Yeah.
it's my pleasure.
But yeah, I would like to get everybody a2aexpedition.com. But you do have one book that is on Audible, and that one of the things with backpacking and as much time as I spend in a vehicle, that is one thing I really wish you would do, is record yourself reading your books. I would love that. That would be incredible, and yeah, give you another way for people to read your books.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I've got a friend of mine, Scott Brown. He wrote a bunch for I think 4 by Overland and a bunch of other.
Hmm
He's actually an engineer, lives in Sweden now. And he came to visit us in Greece. We were taking care of an island. Just one of those serendipitous things where we were
hmm
sitting in a campsite in Italy, and in the middle of winter, and it was snowing, and we were running out of cash, and we didn't know what to do with ourselves. And then Louisa went on this house sitting,
hmm
trusted house sitters, I think it was called. And she came to me and she goes, "Dude, look at this." I'm like, "What?" She goes, "There's an island in Greece that's looking for people to take care of it for 2 months, and they'll give you €1,000 a month for food and whatever." I'm like, "There's no chance." I'm like, "But apply for it anyway." And then she came back 2 minutes later. She applied and she came back 2 minutes later and she goes, "It's gone." I'm like, "Oh, well, no shit, Sherlock. That wasn't going to happen."
Yeah, you tried.
And as I'm giving it, like, as I'm saying that to her, I get a ping, and it's a message that came through. And it was a guy that I'd met in Malawi in 2010, and we had had like 900 beers together. And he had married this South African Greek lady. And guess what? They were running a yoga retreat on an island in Greece.
Wow.
And he's like, "Dude, uh, the island's yours. When can you be here?" And I told you none of my stories are simple. Anyway, fast forward a couple of months, here we are sitting on this island in Greece, and Louisa got hold of Scott and was just chatting to Scott. And he was like, "What you doing?" We're like, "Oh, we're taking care of this island in Greece." And she said, "Oh, you should visit us." And I think a week later, he and his whole family just showed up. And they were living in Texas at the time. And that's it. And they came and visited us, and they stayed with us on the island for 2 weeks, which is awesome. But he brought me a gift, and it was a microphone. And he's like, "You need to record your books."
Mm.
I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I know. He's like, "No, no, no. You seriously need to record your books. It'll be very good for you." And I've been carrying that microphone with me ever since 2018. But you know what you need to record an audiobook? Silence.
Yeah.
I mean, th- there's not a hell of a lot of silence in our life. you know. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether it's been driving up to the Arctic Ocean in winter, or bringing the Land Rover down here, or just living in Mexico with dogs barking all the time. It's that has been my biggest problem, is finding a place that's been quiet enough for me to sit and actually do this. So
Yeah.
what I think I should do is actually find a studio here in the town where I live and actually just go and sit there and get it done.
Yeah.
Thank you for inspiring me. I'll get
Yeah.
it done.
Yeah. Well, I'll listen to them all again because just it's just something about the author reading the book that makes it that much more special. And there is one of your books that is on Audible, but it's an AI voice that actually reads it, and I'm like, this is not the same because
No.
I listening to you talk, that's not you talking, and it's just not the same. So, yeah, it
Yeah, I
would be
know.
so much better if you did it. So much better.
It is
Now,
actually really weird to me when Louisa did that. She did the Audible thing. And then she didn't even ask me, dude. She just did it. And she's like, oh, look at this. I've done this. So I said, okay, let me listen to it. And I was like, so if you read the first chapter of We'll Be Free, the introduction, it's not what you expect it's going to be.
yeah.
It's like, even me reading it now, I'm like, I wrote that? What was I thinking? Oh my God. And there I hear it in this tin American voice. And I'm like, wait, hang on a second. This is too weird, even for me. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, well, it's available for whoever wants to
Yeah,
get the story but doesn't have the time to read. But eventually, I think I'll get around to doing that.
that'll be awesome. Now let's talk a little bit about your Land Rover. You drive is it a 130 series, I believe?
That
130
it's
series
yeah, Land
Defender.
Rover Defender 130.
We talked about this when we were off the air. It's pretty much synonymous with you. If people go back in your books, they can see how it started and how it's developed, how you've changed everything up. But the way it is now, you pretty much um, built everything that's on the back of it. Y'all just took some time off and built that. What made you want to do that and change it from what it was?
We'd been living on the road in a one big roof tent for 4 years. Um, we'd circumnavigated South America. We did a bunch of Africa. We drove up to Alaska and all the way back down. And I got to the realization is that if we were going to carry on doing this, then something had to change,
Mm,
you know, because I was spending a lot of time keeping the family motivated,
mm,
which is difficult
yeah,
when they're living outside all the time, you know, when it's cold, when it's raining, when it's dusty. And you're either in a roof tent, which is only comfortable for so long if you're lying down, especially.
yeah,
And if you're sitting up, it gets horrible after a while. Um, and I absolutely loved the Defender the way it was set up. It was fantastic. But we realized that we were going to be doing this for the next how many years? We needed to look at a better way of doing it. And like I was saying to you off air, is like looking now, they've got some really awesome toppers,
mm,
that you could just slide in. And a lot of those are great, but not really set up for a family of four,
mm,
especially for long term travel.
yeah,
And so those weren't really an option for me then, even if I could afford them. And then we were sitting on the playa, the Alvor Desert, with a friend of mine. I call him Good Guy Steve. He is heads up the kids leukemia research unit at Berkeley. He's a rock climber.
mm,
He's 6'2". He's good looking. He sucks, but he's the most awesome dude ever. He's just like they need to clone this guy, like make a
yeah,
million of him.
yeah,
And so we're sitting on the playa with him, the Alvor Desert, with a bunch of Defender owners, and a storm comes up, a huge dust storm. And this is at night. And he had a 110 Land Rover, which he had taken an ambulance from a 109 series Land Rover. And he had taken the ambulance body at the back and he had grafted it onto his 110 Defender. And we were all sitting in there, about 10 of us, having a party. And you didn't even know there was a dust storm until every now and then a huge cloud of dust would come billowing in through the back doors. But other than that, it was just fantastic. And I was sitting there looking at this guy. With a few adaptations to this idea, I could actually make this work for the family.
mm,
Um, So that's what I did. I was totally inspired by that ambulance buddy. But I had two children and a wife. Steve was on his own with a girlfriend and a puppy. So I had to design it in a way that would fit all of us, bearing in mind that the children would grow and Keenan would eventually become my size.
Mm,
Um, so that's what I did. So I designed it to sleep four adults comfortably and transport four adults comfortably.
hmm.
Um, yeah, and that was the whole thinking behind it.
That's cool. Do you I I have a vehicle that I've worked on for my FJ Cruiser. I've had for about 8 years now, and it feels like it's a part of me. Do you feel like that vehicle is a part of you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I bought it for 9,000 US dollars back in 2009. Actually, today's exchange rate is actually $8,000. And we got into the US and I was seeing that these vehicles were getting sold for stupid money.
It's unreal. It's unreal.
And this is back in 2015, 2016. It's
Hmm.
actually starting to come down a bit now. But that vehicle in America, and that year was in 2016, was unobtainium.
Yeah.
You know, nobody had it.
Yeah.
You know, and so this one guy came over, a couple of guys came over to me, and they were like, "I want to buy your Land Rover." And there were a couple of things that stopped me. Um, One is I'm an idiot. Uh, I should have just taken the money and gone for it. I could have gotten 70 grand for that thing probably.
Yeah.
Um, flown back to South Africa, bought another one, and traveled for 3 years without worrying about it.
Yeah.
That's not the way my brain works. I just looked at her and I'm like, this thing is part of my family.
Mm.
I'm raising my kids in it. I got back to the US now after rebuilding her and taking her to Africa and bringing her back through Canada. A couple of guys come over and be like, I want to buy your Land Rover. And I'm like, man, it's so tough for me because I've raised my children in it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like selling your mother.
Yeah. It's like a
So
family home. It's your family home. It really is.
yeah, yeah, but this is the family home that's taken us through some of the most dangerous and difficult places in the world.
Mm.
Um, and it's I have the best memories of my life. So someone would have to make a seriously silly offer for me to actually consider. That said, if they talk to Louisa, she'll probably just go, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll take that." Oh yeah, okay, no problem. She doesn't have the same emotional attachment to it that I have.
Yeah.
But I think she's a bit more realistic than I am.
Yeah, I don't understand how people can put their life into something like that and just turn around and sell it and start from scratch and just do that every couple of years. It's I'm kind of like you. Somebody asked me yesterday actually. We just got a family car that's it's all wheel drive. And we put a rooftop tent on it just so we can travel in it. And they said, "Are you going to sell the FJ?" And I was like, "Nah, I think I'll probably be buried in that thing." It's just so much emotional attachment, all the memories, everywhere that it's taken me, and the things that I've done in it. And when people see it, they see me. It's kind of
What year is it?
it's '07. It was the first year. And you haven't been able to get them for so long, so it's a collector's item. And of course, right now, it's in the shop trying to get fixed because I broke it, and hopefully in the next couple weeks it'll be fixed. But still, uh, I've had people tell me when the engine blows, what are you going to do? Well, I'll put a new engine in it. It's
Put a new
just
engine in it.
kind of, it's 238,000 miles on it right now. But hey, you just keep putting new stuff, and you've put a lot of new things on the Land Rover here recently. You've got a new suspension, some solar, the Shieldman seats. How are you liking those seats?
I'm loving it.
Yeah.
I am absolutely loving it. The Defender is such a utilitarian vehicle. You
Mm-hmm.
know, when it rains, your foot gets wet. It's pointless having a radio. There's no cup holders.
Yeah.
I took out the AC a long time ago.
Yeah.
You know, when I see all these guys building these Defenders and turning them into luxury vehicles, I kind of I admire it. And especially a lot of time I look at the handiwork and I'm like, that's pretty amazing what you've done. But at the same time, that's not what a Defender is. The new Defender is that. The old
Mm.
Defender it's a tank.
Yeah.
You know, it's bare bones. It's utilitarian. It's tough as nails. You know,
Hmm.
you're supposed to be able to drill holes in it and just stick things on it and cut it up and do whatever the hell you want with
Yeah.
it. And actually, I'd left the landy in South Africa and at a storage place, and I had a mechanic do some work on it, and he just screwed it up completely.
Mm.
Um, and that really, really pissed me off. But then when I got the vehicle back here in Canada, well, back in Canada, um, I took the seat off because it was really uncomfortable, and I took the seat cover off, and it was a different base. Somebody along the line had taken the base that I'd taken such good care of for so many years, and it was molded to the shape of my butt, and they'd swapped it for some piece of shit, cracked up, broken, and deflated seat pad from another
Mm.
Defender, which
Mm.
really irritated me. But it meant though that I was driving long hours in pain
Yeah.
because the frame was just sticking into my ass. Then Toby got hold of me and he was like, "Dude, come on, let's do this." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, sure, let's do this." And what a difference!
Yeah.
What it feels like I changed the whole suspension. That was before I changed the suspension, and it felt like it was driving better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was, and after driving 5 6 hours because we tend to do a lot of long driving, you get out and you don't feel like shit.
Mm.
You know, absolutely fantastic. Those Schulzmans are like they're not cheap, but they're worth it. I really believe they're worth it. They're
That's
fantastic.
cool. Well, with that
Yeah.
and the new suspension, it probably made a huge difference on your long travel.
Well, the suspension, that was the thing. So back in the day, um, I had terra firma heavy duty springs
Hmm.
and shocks on the Defender, and that did great. But then when I rebuilt the vehicle, put the camper body on, I changed the dimensions. And that kind of really affected body roll and stuff like that. And then I changed from the terra firmas, I actually put in, there was another company that I was working with, and they sent me their suspension. But I was never happy. You know, I used to with the Defender as a double cab with a roof tent with the suspension and the wide tires that I had before. I'd go around mountain passes like people couldn't believe how fast I was going around those corners because she was just squat,
Hmm.
you know, and she had great suspension. And I I just never got that level of ride again until now. There's a new company in France called Nimbus,
Mm.
and they make an earlier pneumatic shock, which is basically airplane technology. And there's like it's quite complicated how it's made, but it's so many. You can actually run a vehicle with just the shocks. You don't need the coils. That's how amazing these shocks
Wow.
are.
Wow.
And the shocks themselves, they've got nitrogen in them. They give you up to a 2 inch lift. Have you ever heard of shocks that can lift the vehicle? Never. Well, I think there are a couple of newer brands now that are doing it, but
Mm.
they're also the same, similar, very high end technology. So they sent me
Wow.
that, and I put it in the Landy, and I was like, unbelievable. She went from leaning over on the one side, kind of looking like a
Mm.
lame dog.
Yeah.
You know, all of a sudden, boom, she's up and she's proud. We drove some corrugation out there in outside Bend.
Mm.
There's a lake up there. We drove there with the old Landy, with the Defender before, like she was before, and with a Range Rover
Mm.
Classic, not a Classic, P38. And we had to crawl along on these roads because they were so bad and everything was just shaking to pieces. And I put the new Nimbus suspension in, and I was gliding over that stuff like I was in a Rolls Royce.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. Louisa's like, she just turned to me and she's like, "Are you serious? This is amazing. Go."
And if she's happy, everybody's happy, right?
Exactly. Happy wife, happy life.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
And then
great.
we were doing mountain, and we were driving from Boise to Bend. And there's this part of the, I think it's the 20. The road is the 20. And it goes over these little mountains. And Louisa was busy sleeping. And I'm like, "Let me see how the suspension handles in the twisties." And I was like kind of nailing it. And the thing is, with a heavy 130, it's an old engine. It's turbo diesel. You got to keep that end that the turbo spooled up, right? So when
Mhm.
you're doing mountain passes, going uphill, you're wasting a lot of time going through the gears because you got to
Mhm.
brake before you get into the corner, so you don't have that body roll.
Mhm.
Then you're getting around the corner, and then you get gear down, get the turbo spooling up, go through the gears, right, and then you finally get to the top, whatever you're gearing down the whole. And so if you can go into the corner faster and take it faster and stay in a higher gear, when you're coming out the other side, your turbo's spooled up, right?
Mhm.
And and it was amazing how that suspension made the vehicle drive so much better in the mountain passes. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Um, that was pretty amazing.
That's
So I'm
cool.
pretty happy about that.
That's good. That's good. Well, you stated on one of your Instagram posts that you're glad you're settled down in Mexico because there's still so much more that you want to do to it, and you just really affirmed what everybody says, that a rig is truly never ever done. There's always
Never
something
done.
to do.
Well,
Always
what
something
we
to
did do, what we did do is we got Starlink because it's half the
do.
price here in Mexico as it is in the US. At least it was a couple of years ago. But Starlink just drains your battery. So we went to
Mhm.
Battleborn, and Battleborn sorted us out with a 270 amp hour lithium battery.
Wow.
And we went to Zamp Solar because we've got friends at Dometic, and Dometic's like, okay, let's do some stuff because they know we're going to do the Silk Route soon. So they're going to be on board with that. So Dometic owns Zamp Solar. So we went to Zamp, and they were like, well, you got shit solar panels. Let's change them out. And they got these really low profile solar panels. And they helped us put them on there. So we combined, and then we got Red Arc to
Mhm.
to organize as a manager 30, and then we got um, Wagon Tech to organize
Mhm.
us a. Okay, I work for Expedition Portal. You must excuse me. I'm going to take advantage of these things. But it's good for us. It's good for the company. It's good for
Yeah.
the
Exactly.
publication because I got to review this stuff. So what I've taken is I looked at putting together the best elements of what's available
Mm.
and creating an electrical system that's DIY, but is also absolutely fantastic and reliable. And we went after the Overland Expo in Bend. We went up into the mountains to escape the heat wave. That's when where the road was so corrugated and terrible.
Mhm.
And we were sitting out there with our solar, with our Battleborn, with our Red Arc, and all that stuff, and the wagon. What do you call it? The inverter. And we were running Starlink full time,
Wow.
which we had the Nimble before, and we were down in Mexico, and we could only run, and they had 400 hours, 400 amp hours in that the Nimble camper.
Mm.
And we could only run the Starlink on a separate power bank with its own separate solar panel because it was depleting the batteries so quick.
Mm.
But our Land Rover is a much simpler system. We don't have uh, I always get convection and invection.
I have no idea. Electrical systems are not my thing, so I have no
Yeah,
idea.
so the electric cooker, basically the invection oven,
Yeah.
the eviction
Yeah.
stove. Am I saying that right? Come on now.
Convection. It's a convection.
Convection. No, it's
Uh,
not
yeah.
convection. I'm actually going to go and go. I write for a living. It is induction.
Oh, the induction. Okay. Yeah.
Induction. So you can just delete the last 2 minutes. That'd be fantastic. I know we're live.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Why
yeah,
not?
anyway, so that uh it kills your batteries, the induction
Mm.
stove. Um and then you got combined with Starlink and then all your lights and all the other stuff that you've got going on, running computers and doing all that kind of stuff. So we have a very basic system in the Defender. And we built it ourselves. Louisa did the vast majority of the work putting it all together.
Mm.
Um, which I think a lot of people like struggle with that. Like in South Africa, it's a very macho society,
Mm.
and we'd go buy electrical stuff, and she'd be asking for it, and they kept looking at me like, "Why is she talking to me?" And then I'd have to tell them the story. Oh, let me tell you something. We were up in the Congo, and we had a crank position sensor that was failing. And it was the middle of nowhere, and there was these drunk villagers attacking us and stuff like that. But we managed to get through. We had a Japanese hitchhiker in the back, and my daughter had malaria, and we managed to find this place next to the road. Um, and it was dark when we got there, and we were hidden away. And then we got all the stuff out, and then Louisa fixed the crank position sensor in the Congolese bush,
Mm.
right? And so when I tell them that story, they kind of look at her with different eyes.
Yeah.
Then they're like, "Oh, what
Yeah.
do you need? How can I help you?" Um, so that's it. She's basically built the electrical system.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to lie,
That's
it took a
awesome.
while for her to learn how to get it done right, but that's her responsibility, and she had to do it.
Wow.
And now she's finally nailed it. She's got it down and it's just perfect. It's just running fantastic.
That's incredible. Well, it's amazing to have a partner like that. That you know, that does stuff like that. And what amazes me in your books is how much you talk about how mechanicking is really not your favorite thing. But then you read about how often you're doing it, and you're not doing it in shops. You're doing it on the side of the road, under a shade tree, in a parking lot, in a campsite. It's very, very seldom that you're actually mechanicking in a shop, and that's just adds to uh, the entertainment of your books. I love living through your suffering. I guess is what I'm saying. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's. I always said, you know, when you're broken down on the side of the road and you're covered in grease and you're getting bitten by fire ants, that's when people are going like, "That's really interesting."
Yeah,
Now I'm interested. When everything's going hunky dory, it's not that interesting.
that's exactly
Um,
right.
but where were we? I actually really do enjoy working on a vehicle in a workshop. I love it. Because again, I was talking about having German blood. I love being meticulous.
Mm,
If I can take my time in a well-equipped workshop with clean floors you can eat off of,
mm,
you know, and I can sit and I can work and I can go through it and I can do it precisely, and I have the right tools. I absolutely love doing that. That's to me
mm.
is I think I've done that once in my life that I've actually had that opportunity to
Yeah,
do it.
yeah,
But the rest of the time, it's been like you said, in the bush, or like just the other day, there was a heat wave up near Bend, and I had a wheel bearing going, and I had to do it on the side of the road, and it was 110 degrees, and
mm,
I have no choice. I just have to do it.
yeah,
So that I don't enjoy. I don't enjoy bush repairs.
yeah,
And there's always so much at stake because you can't get it wrong, right?
yeah,
You have to fix it and you have to do it right the first time. You might only have one spare part, and it might have taken you 2 weeks to get that one spare part,
mm,
and you've got a 0% failure rate. You have to get it right, and your first test drive is probably going to be um, 500 miles
yeah,
over mountains through a desert or something like that. So
mm,
that's a high pressure environment. That's a high pressure situation. You know,
yeah,
um, so yeah, it
yeah.
is what it is.
I get it. I get it. Well, I want everyone to take the time, take a chance, get the visit your website. There's all kinds of things on there. You've got a blog on there, a gallery where you can see the build of your Land Rover. You've got books and shirts, gear reviews. You talk about your partners, different things like that. So a2aexpedition.com. Want to invite everybody to go there, check it out. It's definitely worth seeing. Even your blogs are amazing. I love reading those. And then follow you on Instagram because you've got so many things going on. I hope to run into you one of these days to get my books signed. That's the only thing I regret about buying the books all at once is I didn't get them autographed. But I will
Doing
I
games
will
time.
find you one day. I will find you at an expo
So
or something.
yeah, I'm gonna, like I said, I just started working on my latest book today, this morning.
That's awesome.
Um, so that'll be done in a month or two. So I'll probably be promoting it next year at the Overland shows. And then I don't do a lot of podcasts. I don't do a lot of talks. I
Mm,
don't do a lot of that stuff.
yeah,
Um, but now that I've got a lot of my things in my life organized, I think I'm going to have the mental energy to do those things. So I'd probably be doing a bunch of shows next year. And if everything goes to plan, at the end of next year, we'll be shipping the Land Rover out so we can start doing the Silk Route.
oh wow, the
Yeah.
Silk Road. Amazing.
And I don't think we've been to Arkansas yet, but
You
I think
don't
we've
want
been
to
to like,
July or August. Any month but then. No,
oh
not
yeah,
July or August. Yeah, it's awful, awful hot.
is it?
Awful hot. Yeah, we have humidity here like nobody's business. But the
We're,
spring, the fall are amazing.
when we flew in 2020, it was during COVID. We borrowed a Range Rover Classic,
Hmm.
um, and then we drove up, um, and we drove it from Florida up to Maine.
Hmm.
And I've been camping in the Ocala forest and stuff like that with the Defender, and that was okay because there was water around. But man, camping outside Fort Lauderdale
Yeah,
was hell,
yeah.
absolute hell. And then we went up to, I think it was Tennessee, went
Hmm.
into the swamps,
Hmm.
camping in the swamps, running out of water because everyone's pouring it over their head every 2 seconds. You can't jump in the water because it's full of crocs. I mean, alligators.
Yeah,
Ah, that
yeah,
sucked. But it was not as bad as driving through the Sonoran Desert and Death Valley now 2 months ago during the heat wave.
yeah. I read what you posted about that. It was
That
hot.
was hell.
Yeah,
That was
that was
hot.
hot.
And but the Landy did very, very well.
That's good.
Um,
I saw you
yeah,
soaked your shirt. You soaked your shirt and put the hood over your head to keep cool. Had a little fan blowing on you. That was, you know
yeah.
how to do it. You know how to do it. How to
Oh yeah, yeah.
survive in
We've
the
been
heat.
through enough deserts and heat waves. Actually, this is the first time. What we did is we closed the windows because on the Landy, all the heat comes from the transmission. It comes up through the floorboards.
Hmm.
Even though we've got a pile of insulation on there. So what happens is when your windows are open, all the heat from the engine and the transmission comes up under the seats. So when it's 110, 115 degrees, it's actually cooler to close the windows and just run a fan and spray yourself with water than it is to have the windows open. That's how hot it was. We had to do something
That's
creative and different.
unreal. That is getting creative for sure.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I've used enough of your time. I appreciate definitely appreciate. I know you don't do this very often, and for you to take the time to be on here with me, it just means the world to me, and I truly appreciate you, and can't tell you that enough. And I appreciate everybody who's been on here tonight, who's been on Instagram and Facebook, YouTube, and has followed us and listened to us. This will be live on all of the podcast platforms tomorrow. But once again, get on a2aexpedition.com, support Graeme and his family and doing this. And Graeme, just can't tell you enough how much I love you, love your books, and support you and your family, and can't wait to see what you're going to do next. It's truly a blessing.
Thank you, Joe. We've been online friends for a while now. I really do appreciate you having me on it. It's been great to talk to you.
Has. Everybody, thank you. Hope you have a wonderful week. And as I always say at the end of my podcast, look out for number one. Don't step at number two.